Hi, everyone. Welcome to Missourians for Safe Public Schools. I'm Dr. Jenny Norton, and I'm here with the legislative update for you. We have several pieces of legislation that are actually related to education this season. So many that I'm not going to go through them all in this post. What I want to do is just talk to you about some immediate legislation that is going to need some of our attention. So I want to use this as an opportunity for us to practice the agency that we talk about with this group. I know that you all are really busy, but I'm going to talk a little bit about the legislation that's available and then what we can do with that information. So you should know that SB 23 and SB 25 were introduced on January 19th, and they were actually voted and approved with a 5-4 vote. And that means that next week, this will actually be heard again, and this will be an opportunity for us to use our voices on Twitter to articulate how we feel about this particular situation. But first, let me give you a little bit of background. So SB 23 and SB 25 are actually tax provision type legislation. What that means is it's actually meant to siphon off money that is budgeted for public schools and allocate it to help pay for private school tuition. SB 25 also has a charter school expansion with it too, that not only encourages people to build charter schools, but also encourages them to get access to that same funds that would siphon off money from public education. I need you to know right now, they have increased that cap to $100 million. They have also removed the special education provision for children. So what this means is that not only could families choose to send their children to public schools or charter schools, and that money will be taken away, but those schools do not have to provide special education services in the same way that public schools do. Another reason why this legislation is problematic, the siphoning money from public education generally to public or to private schools and charter schools is problematic because there's all sorts of types of provisions that they don't have to account for, like ELL, all kinds of different stuff. They also don't have the same accountability that public schools have. So they don't have to meet the same requirements, yet they get the siphon off money. In addition to that, I think it's important for you to know that that $100 million cap is just for this year. It will actually increase if this is passed by 10% each year. That will be money taken away from public education and siphoned off for private and charter school funds. This is problematic. We need to let our state legislators and our governor know that this is not acceptable. And so the way in which we do that here is through Twitter campaigning. And so I have a separate video that's going to be posted in the comments and also probably at a different archived place. It's going to actually walk you through how to set up a Twitter account if you're not sure how to do so. But we talked over the summer when we campaigned for the start of schools safely in talking about how campaigning works. Let me tell you the reason why we use Twitter. Number one, it's easy and it's accessible. It's also visible. What I mean by that is your state representatives are not actually, they don't have like assistants who are answering the phone for them. When you call them, you are getting them. When you tweet at them, they are seeing that. When they are sitting in legislative session, they generally have their devices, their phone or their computer, and they are looking at information and people are interacting on Twitter. This is a common thing that happens. They will use the hashtag MOLEG, so hashtag MOLEG, and people will post about specific bills. So this is a place for us to have our voices heard. Now, what this does is this does two things for us for advocacy. One, it provides political pressure. What this does is it says that us as educators, as professionals, as administrators, as staff, as parents, as community members, that we are putting pressure on you and that we see this piece of legislation and this is how we feel about it. This is problematic. And it has not been unclear in this group that we are here to support public education. Very clearly, these pieces of legislation are meant to dismantle public education. And so we have an obligation to kind of push back against that. So that political pressure pushes them to have to look at what we're saying, that this is not something that's acceptable. It does a second thing that is simultaneously important, and that provides political cover. So I do not have loyalty to any sort of political group, be it liberal or Republican. I'm certainly not loyal to a particular individual. That's always really bizarre to me when someone is just like, I love this person. I am alliance to the cause, and my cause is public education. And so what I think is important here is to allow people to cross party lines. And when we provide political cover, what we are allowing is for folks who would not normally be able to vote in a particular way, it provides cover for them to be able to do so. And we are falling on that sword. What I mean by that is they get to say, I had to vote against this because we have an entire state of teachers and administrators and staff and community members saying no to this, right? And so we have to be intentional with the messaging that we give from this. So for example, having a range of stakeholders, parents, administrators, staff, and then educators themselves, parents as well. Did I say that? So having a range of stakeholders and then attacking this from a prismatic point of view. Here are the reasons why this is problematic. There's tons of reasons why this is problematic because all students have an obligation to receive well-funded education. If we provided adequate resources for public education, public schools, charter schools would not be necessary. So what happens is this is a very privileging, entitled thing to do, to be able to take your children and go somewhere else, which is not something that everyone has access to do. We also have an issue with educational access in Missouri, be it whether you are in a larger, more urban area like Kansas City or in St. Louis, where you have white flight and you have issues with segregation within the schools, or whether you are in a rural community where you don't have access to resources to get education about how things outside your town work. We need outreach into both areas because we have such a diverse landscape in terms of the type of populations that we have in the state of Missouri. So that's why it's important for us to do political pressure, push them to make the right choice, and then political cover provides space for them to also make that right choice. So when we make this visible push towards them, we are also simultaneously providing that cover. Does that make sense? This is why Twitter is useful rather than calling, rather than writing letters or emails. While those things are useful, and I don't want to dissuade you from doing that, this is useful because this is organizing and it's coalition building and it's putting all of these in one place. So if you do not already have a Twitter account, I would encourage you to get one. I would encourage you, you do not have to use your name. I think that's the biggest pushback that I get from educators is I don't feel safe saying what I need to say. And I think that's a big issue we have in education right now is this lack of expressiveness. And then we've had the deprofessionalization of education for such a long time. We're still seeing the remnants of that. Fit in this box, do what you're supposed to do. Don't push back against that. You don't have to do that. So you can create a Twitter account that doesn't use your name. Create an avatar if you would like. I've seen one that's called Reimagining Schools. I've seen one that's called, there's all sorts of different things. But you don't need to use your picture and you don't need to use your name. You do need to make sure that you have a title that associates you with your role in education. Concerned parent, teacher who cares about public schools. And then your avatar doesn't have to be a picture of you, but you do need a picture. An avatar can also be a cartoon, it can be an image, but we need to know that you're a real person, right? We're not doing a robot situation. We're about being expressive and working towards a goal. So once you have that Twitter account, then what you are able to do is you are able to tweet ideas, your thoughts, in specific places. So tweeting at the governor is useful. Tweeting at specific representatives, useful. Tweeting using the hashtag Missouri Ledge, MOLEG, also useful. So these are all things that we want to do to make it visible. So what I'm going to be doing is kind of getting you some information about Twitter and making a separate video in case you are unsure what that looks like. And then next week, when this legislation is up to be discussed again, I will be letting you know, and we are going to be practicing our campaigning. So it can be at any time during the day. The goal is to get onto Twitter and to tweet at the governor and at the representatives, specifically using the hashtag MOLEG and tweeting about how we need to stop the divestment of schools. So what I would encourage you to do is between now and next week, nothing like it can be just kind of thoughts in your head as you are running errands or grading papers or things like that. But think about why you might be against the divestment of public education. We got issues related to equity. We've got issues related to access to resources. We got issues related to like defunding the work that we do on top of the already stretched thin professionals that we have. Have I mentioned that we're 49th in pay and they want to continue taking away more pay? All of these different things. So be thinking about that. A lot of times what I'll do when I'll do campaigns is I'll try to come up with what are different reasons, what are different arguments why this is bad, and make a list. And sometimes I will like dole those out to people. You can do that as well. So you can actually like set a timer on your phone and you can be like, okay, I've got planning period from 10 to 11. So at 10 to 11, I'm going to go in and I'm going to make a tweet. And then at the end of the school day, while I'm waiting in line for my kids, I don't know, to get out of soccer practice, I'm going to send one more. You see how if everybody sends a couple tweets during the day, we end up with a significant coalition that is communicating with the state in a way that they cannot ignore. So that's kind of the goal of what I'm doing here. I apologize if that's a little bit discursive, but those are some of the bills that are coming up next week. This is the reason why I've created this group and why I use Twitter activism for political cover and political pressure. And we are going to get the opportunity to put that into action next week. I'll be updating you with that. I'm also paying attention to legislation that we've got going on. There's a whole lot of other pieces that I want to bring up, but I wanted to make sure that we get this piece out right now. So I hope that everybody has a wonderful weekend and I will be in touch with you all soon. Get those Twitter handles all set up and ready to go. I'll see you all later.